right, welcome to the May SURSAC meeting. I just want to start as usual by going over some of the guidelines for the meeting. So the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the HCA website. The recording is open to public disclosure, and so please do not disclose any private or confidential information during the meeting. For public feedback, there will be designated time at the end of the meeting in the last 5 to 20 minutes. Each person will have 3 minutes to provide feedback. Non-committee members will remain muted until it is time for the public feedback if requested to share. And if you don't have a chance to share or prefer to just email, feedback that is not provided during the meeting can be submitted via email to hcaesb5476@hca.wa.gov. All right, and we'll go ahead and move into the agenda. All right, so I'll go ahead and just call out the committee members' names and give a few beats. And if you are here, just say here. We'll start with Michael Langer.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Amber Leaders. Senator Dingra. Senator Braun.
Here.
Great, thank you. Representative Davis.
Good morning.
Good morning. Representative Griffey. Caleb Bantagreen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Victor Mendez.
Good morning.
Good morning, Victor. Kira Fisher. Alexi Orr.
Here.
Good morning. Amber Daniel.
I'm here and I still have no chat feature. I can't read or chat, just so you know.
Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you, Amber. We are working on it. Brandy Flood.
Here. I'm here.
Hi, Brandy. Vicky Lowe.
Here.
Good morning. Chad Enright.
Here.
Good morning. John Hayden.
Here.
Hi, John. Marshall Glass.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sherry Candelario.
I saw her name just a moment ago.
Yeah, I think she's here. Hallie Birchinall. Teresa Atkinson.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sarah Gillard. Tank. Malika Lamont.
Present.
Good morning. Addie Atwell. Kevin Ballard.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I know Hunter is not able to make it today. Kendall Simmons.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Rep Taylor. Rep Mossbrucker. All right. So that does it for the roll call. So now I'll hand it over to Michael for our new member introduction.
Thank you, Michelle. And again, welcome everybody. Great to see everybody here today on a early May, I guess the second day of May, and what is, I believe, our 6th SURSAC committee. So I really appreciate you guys sticking with us. I know there's been a lot of communication and committee work started up between the April meeting and today. So really thankful for all the time that you're committing. This is my opportunity to introduce Vicky, who is going to join us, representative of our federal recognized tribe and our tribal partners. So Vicky, as we brought folks on new, we've given people opportunity to say a little bit about themselves and also maybe talk a minute about your interest in serving on the committee. So this is a couple minutes for you, Vicky, to let people know who you are and what your interest in SURSAC is.
Thanks, Michael. Good morning. Iswachi Vicky Low since Stithlam Nusklayam since New Hawk. Good morning. My name is Vicky Low. I'm Jamestown Sklallam and Bellicula First Nations from Canada, and I'm the Executive Director for the American Indian Health Commission. The American Indian Health Commission is a nonprofit that is operated by the tribes and the urban Indian health programs in Washington State. So I work on behalf of them, which is a job I just really, truly enjoy. Prior to working with the commission, I worked at the Jamestown Sklallam tribe for 19 years. I've been working in the Indian healthcare delivery system for 26 years. I hate to admit that. You know, the tribes across the state and urban Indian health programs have been really focusing on the COVID response lately. But as we're getting back to our regular work, many of the tribes have into starting MAT programs, providing Suboxone services. And, you know, we have had longstanding substance use disorder programs. And so just want to make sure that we're up to speed with what's going on across the state and can help support the work that's going on. I will be sharing this work with our delegates. We meet regularly. We also have the American Indian Alaska Native Opioid Response Work Group that we share information with. I'm working to recruit some of our tribal providers to some of the subcommittees too. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to work with you all, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Really appreciate your interest in serving. And as we've said to each member coming on, please share your thoughts with us as we go through here. You want this to be an active group and one that feels comfortable sharing their perspectives as we go through some of these complex but really important issues. And it's great to hear from all perspectives. So please join in as you can. At this point, I want to also talk about just the SURSAC resources, if you will, that we're going to bring into play in order to help support the committee in all of your work and get us ready for that subcommittee work and the work coming back from the subcommittees in order to get our plan put together by this fall. So I want to introduce Blake Ellison. Blake sat in our last meeting and listen, there he is. If you see him on your Hollywood Squares piece there, I'll give Blake a chance to say a couple words in here in a moment. But Blake is joining us from our planning and performance division, I believe is what it's called. And they help support efforts such as this, when we're bringing in lots of voices and have assignments that create reports and things of that nature. He can help make sure that we're moving along at a proper pace so that we can get our work done on time, and also ensure that we're getting the voices coming in from all perspectives, as I mentioned earlier. So we're really pleased. Blake is going to help facilitate the meetings from this point forward, these larger meetings, and then our staff will continue to support the subcommittee work as well. I will continue to chair the group, and so if there's decisions to be made or general direction given, that kind of thing, I will certainly be here and be chairing, but Blake will be our facilitator. We're also, with his team, going to bring in some capacity around Mente, and Mente is just, many of you have probably used it, but it's a opportunity to take some kind of live polling during our committee meetings from this point forward. So make sure for some of those of you that are less apt to speak up or to jump onto a conversation, your perspectives will still be shared. So I'm not sure we'll use it today, but it is available to us to use in the future if we need it. Also, you'll notice during our, some of the more, I use the word complex already here about 2 or 3 times, but some of our conversations that are complex in nature, we'll be able to start taking notes on screen. So you'll be able to see that your voice is being documented, and that we can build on one another as we go through the conversation. So the team brings in quite a few different both virtual and in-person resources for us, and we thought that would be helpful for our group here as we push through for the next 5 to 6 months here to get our plan written and prepared and ready for publication this fall. So any questions on that, let me know. Raise your hand, or we can answer questions, and then I'll give Blake a moment to say hello, and then we'll move on to our next piece here. So.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Hello, everybody. Like Michael said, my name is Blake Ellison, and I work in the Planning and Performance Division for the Healthcare Authority. I serve as the Process Improvement Manager, do a bit of this work around committees and so forth, and I know this is really, really important work, and I'm happy to support it, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Blake. We'll be hearing from you just in a moment. I will check the chat and see if we have any questions that have come in or comments so far. I don't think I've seen any. At this point, as we did with our last meeting, and we've committed to going forward, is we're going to have a committee member kind of review quickly our committee norms and expectations, and so that we're all on a reminder of the playing field that we're living within here over the next hour or two. And today, Alexi Orr has volunteered to do that work for us. So Alexi, do you want to go ahead and remind us of what our norms are for the committee?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everybody. The SURSAC committee norms and expectations. Assume good, positive intent from everyone. Consider diversity, equity, inclusion, and tribal impacts in the work we are doing. Offer both and as opposed to either or. Show mutual respect. Be solution focused. When identifying a barrier or systemic problem, offer ideas for potential solutions, as well as to inspire progress and creativity. Be fearless and willing to share innovative ideas or dissenting opinions with confidence that they will be heard. Make best effort to attend all committee meetings when attendance isn't possible. Inform the SURSAC Administrator, Michelle Martinez. Can you scroll down, Michelle?
So I think we're just going to do the first part from now on
okay.
for sake of time. Yeah, thank you so much,
Perfect.
Alexi.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alexi. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is an overview of the feedback cycle and training tracking chart. And Michelle's going to take us through that.
Okay. All right, so we want to be super clear about, especially now that we've entered the formulation phase of the plan writing process, that you all know exactly how the feedback that you're giving us is being translated into the actual written plan. So, so that's what this slide is all about, and we'll go through the cycle. So I know it might seem like a lot, but so we've got the monthly meetings. And so far we haven't done any decision or voting on exactly what goes into the plan yet. But we've collected a lot of ideas from you so far. So any new ideas go into the committee recommendation tracking chart, which I sent out a copy to you all on Tuesday. But if you haven't had a chance to look at that yet, that's also attached in the meeting. And that's where Brianna has been recording all of the ideas and suggestions that have come out of the conversation so far, so that we can track, just make sure that it's written down, recorded, and that we can go back and see where, how to follow up with that, what other information is needed, you know, how to move it forward if the subcommittees decide to move it forward. So first it goes through a scope assessment, and then the chart is updated to note anything that's out of scope. Then any of the remaining ideas and suggestions go into the subcommittees. And we work with the subcommittee co-chairs to set the agendas to make sure those are discussed in the conversations. And then during the subcommittee meetings is where things are really fleshed out. So, so that's where an idea actually becomes a written recommendation, and also new ideas can be pitched, new recommendations can come up. And then those are drafted into the SURSAC recommendation forms. I think it might be called the SURS plan recommendation form. And I'll make sure that we review these actual forms as well in just a minute. And then once an idea is drafted into a formal recommendation, the chart again is updated so that you can see how these ideas are moving forward. And once a form is ready to be presented to a monthly meeting, the co-chairs will forward those forms to me so I can add them to the monthly agenda. And then everyone gets copies of those recommendations so that you have a chance to take a look at it before the meeting and think about what kind of iteration, questions, other things that you have that you would need to know before you could decide whether you support that recommendation or not to go into the actual final written plan. And then at the monthly meeting starting in June, we will start having time to review the recommendations that have come from the subcommittees and come to consensus or use a voting process to decide whether or not to add those into the written plan. And the reason why we need these forms and that they're formatted in the specific way is so that Brianna can have the information she needs to make sure that the recommendations are hitting on the different pieces we need them to hit on. Like, are they considering people with co-occurring substance use disorder and mental health problems? Are they considering tribes? Are they considering how we're going to be equitable in the way that we distribute services throughout the state, both geographically and among other demographics? And so that helps us ensure that we're going to be hitting the mark with each of the recommendations. And then for those that go into the plan, we update the plan itself. And also for anything that it's possible that we can implement right away, for example, some of the recommendations around Recovery Navigator program data collection, those things can get implemented right away. So that is, that's how that cycle works. And then I just want to make a note real quick also about the use of slides. So if you have slides prepared to supplement one of the recommendations brought forth by the subcommittee, those are absolutely welcome. But they just need to be tied into a specific recommendation because that is the task of this committee to provide guidance and advice and recommendations for the plan. And so to save time, we just want to make sure that everything is moving toward that deliverable. Okay. So there are a few parts of a few elements of the plan that don't really fit nicely into one of the subcommittee categories, or they're just core decision items that we want to begin the discussion with in the full committee. So for example, the criminal legal response to possession of controlled substance, which you may have noticed is today's discussion item. And then also the funding framework to shift resources from the punishment sector to community-based care. That will be another conversation that's initiated in the monthly meetings as opposed to in the subcommittees. So the tracking document outlines all the ideas that have been collected so far by subcommittee. So you can see which subcommittee is tasked with carrying those conversations and ideas forward. And yeah, and you'll be receiving an updated version of this tracking document at least once a month so that you can see what's happening across all the subcommittees and how those ideas are being moved forward, or if they've been decided to not be a priority, or however the subcommittees are handling those decisions. Okay, I'm going to go back to the cycle and field any questions about this. Yeah, go ahead, Caleb.
Good morning. I'm curious, what are the standards if they've been chosen for voting or making decisions? Is it majority? Is it consensus? What is the approach there?
Yes, simple majority vote. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I believe that's what we had discussed.
Yeah, we will want to get as close as consensus as possible, right? I mean, it'd be great if everybody would agree on the recommendations coming forward. And if there's any outstanding questions when they do come forward, we could try to get those answers before we take a vote, if that would help us get closer to consensus. But in the end, it's probably going to be the majority. If the group would want to put a supermajority in of some sort, that we don't go with anything less than 60% or 75% or something, we can talk about that. Happy to entertain what ideas you may have that way.
Yeah, and Malika, go ahead.
So I'm curious what the, can we get more specific on a time frame on when we will get the recommendations? Because I've been noticing throughout multiple parts of this process is that we get stuff at the last minute, and it doesn't allow time to be able to read it, engage with it, think about it in order to create a meaningful response. And also for work group members, even though meetings are recorded and all the information is there, chairs are having to scramble to get information into documents with a quick turnaround. So it seems like a more respectful process to give, like, what can we say that we'll have a week to review things so that we're not getting it like 8 o'clock the night before the meeting or something.
Yeah, that's a great point, Malika. And I'm thinking about, so every subcommittee is meeting twice a month. And so there could be a policy that it's the first meeting of the month that you submit the recommendation for the following monthly meeting. But I'm curious then, because if that allows enough time for folks, because then you've got the last meeting happening in the fourth week of the month. Do you want recommendations that come out of that one to also be in the next monthly meeting? So there's that to consider, and I would really appreciate any feedback you have around that, because I understand your point that it's, having time to review the recommendations is essential, and at the same time, subcommittees may be eager to have their recommendations, seen at the next monthly meeting. So,
I mean, if we could even get 48 hours, like if we could even get 48 business hours, I mean, that would seem like that's doable.
Yeah, great. So in that case, so there's a Wednesday, and then you would have Thursday, Friday to review before the Monday meeting. So, so that should be fine. I will, yeah, okay. If the recommendations are drafted and ready at the end of the Wednesday meeting, or at the end of any meeting, I can just add that to the agenda and send that out. Perhaps what I'll do is send them out as they're ready, if that would be helpful for people, instead of waiting to send them with the agendas. So I know sometimes these agendas come out late. So anyway, I'll be mindful of that, and you will have at least 48 hours to review before the Monday meeting. Thank you for that feedback. Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I was wondering if we could get this plan writing process in a non-PowerPoint form, because my boss hasn't been able to put Office on my computer yet, and I really want to be able to print it out. And then secondly, can we talk about the specificity of recommendations and what that's supposed to look like?
Yes, thank you very much. I will go into the form, and then we can kind of go through the form and talk about the specificity level. So thank you for that segue. And I can create a PDF of these slides for you and anyone else that needs them to not be in a PowerPoint form. Okay, so now seems like a good time to move into the tracking document. All right, so this is what the tracking document looks like, a chart that has the recommendation that came from the SURSAC, and priority level, that's for the subcommittees to decide. And then any notes regarding follow-up around that recommendation, the bill requirement that it touches on. And then once these are submitted to SURSAC, a yes or no about whether it's been submitted to SURSAC. And the first section here is the recovery support services recommendations, and then it goes, divided by subcommittees, you go down. But I'm just going to scroll down to the form. So this is, excuse me, the substance use and recovery services plan recommendation, like the formal recommendation submission form. And so at the top, 1 or 2 sentences summarizing the recommendation, and then a piece to fill in about what bill requirement it touches on. And then this is a really important part. Is this a contract request, a state plan amendment, a funding request, or a legislative policy change? So being very, specific about what you want the state to do. What are you recommending that the state does? So it needs to be more specific than explaining that this other program or this other model is great and it works. Excellent. So do you want to expand that plan? Do you want, and are there specific areas of the state that you want it to expand into? Do you just need more money? Does the program just need more money? Do we need to establish contracts or change a policy? So it needs to tie back into something that is actionable for the state. And then the synopsis is a place to write about the discussion that surrounded that recommendation. So talking about any barrier that it is addressing, how it's helping the different populations that we're needing to help, and potentially any challenges around it or potential downsides as well. So the synopsis is a place to be more detailed about the thought process that went into it. Plan of action. So listing out the course of action for the plan. So does it require other subcommittee involvement, interagency involvement, community partners, other programs? So listing the steps needed to get to the results, and the population or area that it affects. The financial impact piece, we'll have people at the subcommittee meetings to help out with this part. But these just need to be rounded, estimated numbers. It doesn't have to be super specific, but just to give a sense of the level of investment needed to put that recommendation into action. And then this part, the consideration of youth, rural areas, and tribes. And so making sure, again, that we're being equitable and considering these different populations in the recommendations. And then a section on collaboration or existing programs. So are there any current programs that are already in this space and any legislature or grants that could work with this recommendation or support that recommendation? And then indicating if it is feasible and supportive of the authority, and the committee feedback. So these pieces, especially the SURSAC committee feedback piece, you won't be able to fill in until you bring it to the committee. So don't worry about that initially. But the rest of it should be ready to go to present to the SURSAC for consideration. And so when that happens, we'll take a look at it during the meeting, gather feedback, and it can go one of 2 directions. Either there's wide consensus and support for it, and we can move it forward into the plan, or there will be feedback about this is really strong, but this part doesn't make sense to me, or can we change this or that? And then it can go back to the subcommittees for iteration and then come back for final decision or voting. So it doesn't have to be decided on, yes, no, right then and there. There is room for additional feedback and iteration. And so, to be aware of that as well. But those pieces need to be figured out before it gets brought to the monthly meeting for wider discussion. Okay. Any questions about that? Sorry, there are hands up. I am. Okay, go ahead, Malika.
So as a person that's on a number of subcommittees, it is interesting to me that through working on this process, none of these directions were shared with folks that had to fill out these papers. They were just given to people that are community co-chairs to fill out. We're told that the reason why there has to be so much presence from HCA at these meetings is because y'all are supposed to be the ones doing the work. But community co-chairs that have full-time jobs, families, lives, and are participating in this process are the ones that have to fill out this paperwork. It is concerning to me that this is not equitable. That is not equity. Like, are we not, I mean, has it not occurred to people that, you know, you literally have people that have experienced the impacts of these systems and then are being asked by another system to do all of this extra work without being compensated for it, and then going through like a really arduous process. Like, I'm going to say again, we are being asked to transform systems, but we are doing business as usual. I'm not saying that we won't do this because this work is important, like we're going to figure it out, but I just want to point out the inequity of the process. This is not right.
Yeah, Malika, I really appreciate that. And I think the first time these forms were filled out, there was under communication on my end about the specificity. From now on, these documents will be completed in the subcommittee meetings. They should not require outside effort and unpaid work on anyone's part. They are to be drafted with all the subcommittee members present, the HCA folks present, everyone there at the table who can help, you know, that has this information and can help flesh this out together so that that doesn't happen again. Yeah, and that was perhaps misguided effort on my end to try to get that form through as fast as possible, not having the information I needed to do that work myself. So that's, I apologize for that, but moving forward, absolutely, these forms will be drafted during subcommittee time to avoid that extra time needed and all of that. I hope that helps to address the concern. Caleb, go ahead. Sorry. Okay. Caleb, go ahead.
So along those same lines, I mean, you know, I'm fortunate in that this is the type of thing that I do for a living, although this is not my job. But this can't happen in an hour and a half meeting. I mean, I need technical expertise. I need fiscal analysts from HCA. I need a bunch of people to help make this happen. You know, I mean, literally, this could be my full-time job working on it, literally, and it's not my job. So I want to make sure that HCA is bringing those resources. I know there were several dozen staff, I think, funded by this legislation to these committees. If these are going to be working committees, which I love the idea of getting it done in this committee meeting, we have to have the technical expertise to supplement all of this. So I'm asking what's going to be done to bring those resources to bear to each of those committees. I have a wonderful colleague, Linda Barker, who I know is assigned to my committee, and I've worked with her for many years, and she's awesome. But I can't imagine that she or any single HCA person has enough technical expertise to answer all those questions complete enough. I feel like the bar is being set so high that we can't meet it. We can't bring anything forward when I think the goal is to bring things forward.
Yeah, so we are bringing a lot of HCA staff to these meetings. Brianna, I think, said in the chat that she's also going to be present and doing a lot of the writing herself for these forms. And so we, yeah, that's the plan, and that's the support.
But I don't need writing. I don't need writing help. I need technical expertise help. I need technical expertise help.
Yeah, and that's why these subcommittees are so robust. We're counting on the collective knowledge of all the members to really be able to provide the information needed to move these forward. Yeah, go ahead, Malika.
This is a prime example of the system reorienting in order to protect business as usual. To Caleb's point, we are not fiscal analysts. We do not have access to all of the information. We weren't, it took like threat of a public records request to even get a transcript of the meeting that y'all recorded to go to one of the chairs. How in good faith can you say that there's a diverse group of people in these work group meetings, but yet it's going to be our responsibility in order to fill out this paper or fill out this, not just one paper, like for each recommendation, you have to fill out this whole arduous like paper that we're not going to have any room to have a conversation about the policy changes that we want to see. Like, we're not, that you can't do all of that in an hour and a half. We can discuss the issues and go back and, you know, have everything be recorded and then bring forth our recommendations. But I don't understand how in anyone's world that much work when we have to do it. Because from what's happened so far, y'all were not doing anything except for recording the meeting. I mean, and maybe there was something going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, but this is what systemic oppression and systemic violence look like. I am very disappointed.
I will say that there was just one meeting so far for the 2 new subcommittees, and the treatment subcommittee hasn't even had a meeting yet. So it does take 1 or 2 meetings to be able to, you know, get a recommendation ready and prepared. And we haven't had the meeting yet that tries to do this. So I think that we can. You may be right that it does create a lot, that it takes more time than we think it does. But we haven't tried yet to do it together.
Michelle, this is Michael.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what we've said is that we'll have staff at the subcommittees. We will do the drafting of the forms. If there's additional staff that need to come in for technical support, then let's identify who they are. And we may not get them all there on day 1, but if the chairs or any members think that we need additional support, that can come from within HCA. It might be folks outside of HCA that we bring in to help support the process. So we do want your best thinking. We do need to document things so that we make sure we meet the intent of the legislation, and that's what we're attempting to do. And so I think we can appreciate the feedback, and we'll strive to make sure that what we're getting is your points of view and interest, and we'll work with our staff to document that and get it prepared for the committee. But it does take some time to do that, and it's not going to happen in a probably 1 meeting cycle there. So, and to Caleb's point, if we need additional technical expertise, we'll invite it in.
Any other questions about the cycle or the form itself? Like, is your hand up again or still up? Okay. All right, well, then I'll go ahead and stop sharing that, and we can move on to the next agenda item.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Appreciate that. So we are going to spend the majority of our time today, it looks like, talking or reacting to Section 1.3 of the bill, which is talking about recommended criminal legal response, if any, to possession of controlled substances. Now, and I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for you so you have that to right in front of you. Brianna, do you mind bringing up your screen so we can record our discussion here? I know we're already recording it, but just to put it on the screen. Okay, thank you. There we go. Oops, put that in there twice. So the first question we want to ask, and it kind of went with the last conversation, the folks have been at this for a couple months, and we wanted to get your feedback on what information is needed, do you need and I'm starting in the middle here, but the questions, but what information is needed for you to formulate your recommendations? So you've been at this for a while. I know there's been some discussion on the different elements. We just talked about some information that maybe we needed to get through fiscal, things of that nature. I want to get your thoughts and about what do you need to make your recommendations? What are we missing? that we don't have, or something else that you've thought of from your own personal perspective about, hey, you know, in order to do this, make this decision properly, this would be a nice to have or a need to have for that matter. So hopefully the question makes sense. And we'll start with, again, using the same hand raising method here. And I'd like to get feedback on that question again. So given the bill, what you know now, in your perspective, what other information do you need to formulate the recommendation? We have a hand up, Malika.
Well, the first part of my answer is, are you going to be sharing the formal recommendations that were shared with Michelle regarding this exact question? They were submitted last week. Will they be shared with the rest of the group? And one of the other things that we need to do is create a racial analysis, an analysis of racial impact of decriminalization of possession versus legalization of supply.
Okay. So that sounds like something that that we need to write down there. Malika, I'm sorry I didn't get all of that. Can you do you mind repeating that real quick so we can get that down, Brianna?
Well, the first part is the group going to be able to see the recommendations that were put forward by the outreach and engagement work group and outreach, engagement, and diversion work group, specifically on this question. And we need to create a formal analysis of the racial impact of decriminalization of possession versus legalization of supply.
Okay, so let's go with the first then. Michelle, on the recommendations, response there?
Yeah, so the meeting notes for the last OED subcommittee were sent out a few days ago, and I was, yeah, once those are finalized, there's no edits, no adjustments to the notes. I want to make sure those are accurate and accurately reflect your ideas. Then those will go into the tracking sheet that we reviewed earlier for everyone to be aware of and to have follow up. So they will be shared.
Okay, because we filled out the formal form. We filled out the formal form that you sent, that you just showed us. We filled that out. So I mean, granted, we didn't have the fiscal impacts because we don't have that expertise. We don't know how much, we don't know what budgets are and all that other stuff, but we filled out the synopsis and the formal recommendations. So both of those things are available if the whole group is interested in hearing that. But the other piece was needing analysis of the racial impact of decriminalization of possession versus legalization of supply. If we actually want to really look at addressing racial disparity and creating laws that move that forward and move this into being addressed as a health issue.
Thank you, Malika. Thank you. All right, and feel free to chime in as much as you like, folks. So we'll go next. We'll go to Amber.
Oh, I was just going to speak to Malika's question, the first part about the recommendations. Okay. I just want to let her know that the outreach and engagement diversion co-chairs had a kind of like a meeting last week and decided that we were going to bring these recommendations to the actual subcommittee to help flesh them out with everybody there and then present them in June. So that was what was decided in that meeting, and I'm sorry I didn't update you.
Okay. So we've got one idea on the board here, or one thing that we need that would be useful to make our decisions. What else do we need? Senator Braun.
Yeah, thank you. So it seems to me we need to understand how the criminal legal system is being used. So if it is being used to incarcerate for periods of time, that's one use, of course. But if it's used as leverage to encourage folks to enter treatment and hopefully successfully complete treatment, that's a different thing. And unless you really look at how it's being used and for what purposes and to what ends, I don't think you can make a thoughtful decision on how to what the appropriate criminal legal system response is.
Mhm. Okay. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that we need a current state of what we have going on to be able to look forward. Would that be accurate? Just the current state of the system?
It sounds like, I don't have a chat feature. Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like what Senator Braun is talking about is the intent behind what law enforcement is doing or has done in the past. And
Right.
I think that what we need to really look at is what the effects have been of what they've been doing in the past or what they're doing now. And maybe that is something that we could get an analysis on.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think there's two tracks there. One, if it's simply long-term incarceration, that may lead us in one direction. If it's deferment and that deferment leads to treatment that's successful and folks are able to re-enter kind of a civil life, that's a different outcome. These are wildly different outcomes that we need to know which is happening and how successfully before you could make this choice, it seems to me.
Okay. Okay. So how does that capture it? Does the second bullet there?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we had Lauren Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to thank Senator Braun for the question and expound on that a little bit. I think there's definitely a very broad kind of public perception that the criminal legal system was being used, in fact, as some sort of effective leverage or engagement tool. I think it would be super helpful if we could get any actually outcome data. So the one data point that I do have, but I'm sure there are others, I don't know if RDA might be able to help with this, but so of the 9,000 arrests annually in Washington State for possession, only 3% of those folks were ending up in drug court. And so that means 97% were not. And it's my general belief and understanding that those 97% were not getting any treatment engagement at all. But it would be super helpful if we could have kind of crystal clear numbers on that, because I think Senator Braun's point is extremely valid. And if we had the data, I think that would help.
Okay, so we're looking for, Rihanna, if we write that down as some numbers that we can use to to see about drug court utilization and probably other things as well. All right, thank you. Caleb.
Sorry, trying to do this on my phone.
Yeah, no worries.
So I want to broaden this out a little bit because the challenge is, and I'm a researcher, when you look at published evidence, it by definition is looking backwards. And we're trying to create new models of care. So I think we also need to do some thinking and some modeling types of exercises. That is, do you need a lever? Do you need a hammer? In the context of widely available, kind, humane, effective, comprehensive, community-based, low barrier harm reduction services. We don't really have a world yet in which we can pull those data. We have some small experiments, and I think we should look at that. But that generally is not, a study on a community where you can look at the system-wide impact. So I just think we really need to think about that. We're trying to look forward, we're trying to be transformative, and we're looking backwards to systems that pretty definitively don't work very well. We can certainly try to go look for examples. And then the challenge is when we do look for levers, the data around that, that's in the context of high barrier care, which we're trying to not replicate. So I just want to put that out there that I love research, I love data, but we also need to get our thinking caps on and think about, well, if we take these pieces of evidence-based care and make them readily available, could we do something truly different?
Thank you. So we record that as, I heard the word modeling. You know, is it possible for us to, and we're not going to answer it in this moment, certainly, but it would, you know, would that be useful for doing some modeling to look at what might happen? Thank you, Caleb. All right, Malika.
In alignment with what both Caleb and Lauren have said, I mean, I think we have plenty of research data on whether the criminal legal system works in the way that people are hoping that it, I mean, you know, the hope that I feel is being sincerely expressed by Senator Braun, but is not actually, it's not the reality to the point that Lauren has, you know, suggested that 97% of people don't get what they actually need. And for whom, you know, like if we're really looking at starting to address disparity, you know, we have data that can demonstrate what and how and to whom these things are, or, you know, these impacts are occurring. So if we had an opportunity to collectively look at that research data, I think that that could be illuminating for folks to make us maybe feel more comfortable moving in the direction that Caleb is describing.
All right. Thank you, Malika. And so how would we put that down here as far as a bullet point we can remember to come back to? If you wouldn't mind.
So we need research. We need research data on whether or not the criminal justice or criminal legal system works the way that
we think
Senator Braun was asking about.
Okay.
And for whom?
Okay. Brianna, did you happen to get that? All right. Nice work. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Malika. Kevin.
Thank you. As kind of a community representative with very little experience in, you know, working specifically in substance use and recovery, there is a perception by some communities that monies being spent aren't equating to true results. They're not seeing that. With that being said, some of the research that I'm just, you know, cursory knowledge looking at is that the impact of decriminalization certainly means that there's going to necessitate an increased number of healthcare providers needed to help these people if they're diverted away from the criminal justice system. So to Caleb's point, you know, the modeling becomes really important here. How much more, how much more do we need to add to the current system in order to potentially take care of the additional people that, you know, are going to be diverted from our legal system? And what is that fiscal impact potentially? Because, you know, we want to spend the monies that have been given to us in a responsible way, and certainly an equitable way. So I think those two things really need to be looked at as part of this decriminalization and its impact discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. On that, excuse me, on the fourth bullet, Brianna, could you mind just putting a modeling /study on that? Yeah, just so we because that's come up a couple times now, and I think that's looking forward. Okay, and then Vicky Lowe.
I just want to add on to what Kevin said, and that the costs aren't just in the criminal justice system. And I think that's kind of a mistake we kind of make, that, you know, it's also the impacts that with DCYF and CPS and foster care and other sectors of the community. So, you know, when you're doing that modeling, make sure that we're looking at all the costs that come from incarcerating people for instead of treating them.
All right. Thank you. All right, Amber.
I had 3 comments. I'm going to try to my handwriting sucks, sorry. I just wanted to say, as a person in rural Washington, I want to agree with Caleb that there's a wide spectrum of programs that are community-based, harm reduction focused, and everything, but there's not a wide availability of those in this part of the state, and I think that we should really look at the gaps where those services aren't available. And I definitely want to say that's a recommendation I would like for this committee to work on at some point. And I think that we should also look at the money that is saved on healthcare costs and ER visits by those types of harm reduction and community-based programs. And then I had a question about, like, I know that each county's drug court and diversion systems are designed by that area. And I know, as a person that was in drug court in Pierce County, that there are certain crimes that you can't have committed, certain drugs you can't have ever done, things like that exclude you from being a participant in those programs. And I would like to know what the differences are in, like, different counties' adult recovery court programs or diversion programs in their inclusivity of people and their paths, and like and what the outcomes are in brain fart, sorry. Like, I'd like to see what the outcomes are next to those inclusivity factors based on, like, county or region or whatever. Is that something that we could look into?
How does that look? Does that look like something we can come back to right there, Amber?
Honestly, I can't read it because the little bar on Teams is right in front of it. If you could scroll up, I could probably read it. Right, and I would like to see, like, and when I say inclusivity, I'm talking about the nature of the crimes of people and other distinguishing factors like race and stuff like that. So.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Good. Okay. Michael? Oh, no, go ahead, Amber.
Yes.
Get more?
Yeah, I was going to say I wanted to know which areas in the state are offering diversion programs or recovery court for youth.
Okay. All right, Brianna, if you got that. Michael?
Yes, thank you, Blake. I just saw that the number of hands up was waning here. This is a really important question, right? In terms of recommendations regarding the appropriate criminal legal response, if any, to possession of controlled substances. So this is folks that we haven't heard from yet. Please think about this and consider letting us know what you would need to be able to make a recommendation. We've got a lot of lines here that we can go back and see if we can pull data in to bring back to you as a committee or to us as a committee so that we can make a recommendation. But what I've heard from our legislative friends that are on the committee and folks outside is that they're really looking for this committee for recommendations. We were in the felony category, and then we were without anything for a couple months there, and then we've got the misdemeanor in now. What should the legal response be? And we're not going to be judge and jury on that as a committee, but we're certainly looked at for a recommendation. So see if the questions that you have up there now, if we are able to bring back some answers, I'm not sure we can get them all. If we can bring back some answers, would that give you enough for us to have a conversation and make a recommendation? Or is there anything else that we need? That's really the question on hand, and we have plenty of time here. And I think I've stalled enough because I see a few more hands up here. So I'll be quiet and just really encourage, if we haven't heard from you yet, please let us know what you think you might need in order to help give some feedback to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Caleb.
Oh, is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet? I'd rather they go first.
All right. How about Chad? Chad, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to talk about, I mean, just the very limited question here of possession of a controlled substance. So I'm a county prosecutor. We had a meeting last week of county prosecutors around the state. Obviously, not everybody was there. And I asked the question, I said, who is actively prosecuting possession of a controlled substance right now? And the answer was nobody. The way the law is currently written, it just makes it, frankly, inefficient for us to actively prosecute. To be fair, there were a few who said that if they got a referral on a case that they would consider it and they would probably charge it to see what happens. Would a judge hold somebody in jail? Would a jury convict? I don't know. But for the most part, I'm sure there are charges out there somewhere in this state, but for the most part, it's not being charged right now. And so I think the question for people here is what is going on right now working? And if it is, certainly, continue down this path. If it's not working, we've heard the terms of leverage, and somebody mentioned a hammer earlier. If that is a system we want to return to, because what we are doing right now is really nothing. So I think that to some extent there's a blank slate for this committee to work from.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's go to, in the interest of hearing from new folks here, we'll get back to Caleb and Senator Braun and Malika. John, did you want to make some comments?
Yeah,
John
just briefly. I agree with what Chad said. I mean, our experience out here, and certainly on the defense side, is that we just don't see possessions being charged anymore. And I think it's real important that we maintain our perspective here. We can look backward, 120 years or so, and realize all the things that didn't work, that haven't worked. Now we're sort of in this limbo in terms of the structure of the criminal code. Well, we need to remember what didn't work and look forward and take a cue from some of the things that do work, like treatment courts. Treatment courts are by and large pretty successful, at least with adults. I am a little concerned about the notion of using criminal charges as leverage to get people into treatment. I don't think that's probably good social policy. But again, we know what didn't work, so now we have to figure out what our sort of philosophical orientation is going to be, or do we want to go back to a punishment-based criminal code in terms of drugs, or not? I personally think that'd be a huge mistake. We need to recognize public health issues for what they are and deal with them that way.
Okay. Thank you. Caleb, we're gonna back to you.
Okay. Just two things just to throw into the mix. I mean, a lot of the folks who come through, one, don't have substance use disorder. They don't have a definable DSM-5 use disorder. So treatment may not even be appropriate, let alone paid for. And or people may not want our formal treatment. So this is where I think it's going to be really important to also incorporate all these different committees and think about, low barrier engagement and harm reduction and those things. And I know in our treatment subcommittee, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at A through N, even though we're theoretically not supposed to look at them all. We'll look at all of them, A through N, as we talk through all the different treatment options. And I think it'll be really interesting, so as you're going down that list, how many of the boxes, for instance, does drug court or low barrier treatment or inpatient, how many of the boxes does it meet in this law, which is specifying, a whole new approach, low barrier, community-based, harm reduction, all of those things. So it's a chance to sort of revisit everything we have been doing with a particular framework that this law specifies and in fact requires that we use in making our decisions. So I think it'll be an interesting process, but I just want to put that out there to remember this law is telling us what to do. It has a framework that is forcing us to sort of revisit using certain criteria. And I know that we'll be using on the treatment subcommittee, we'll be using those criteria when we're discussing different recommendations. So just wanted to contribute that.
All right, thank you. Senator Braun?
Yeah. So, God, there's a lot of interesting comments made. So, I think I want to follow up on the comment earlier. We have years of data before the last year and a half, and then we have the last year and a half. Seems to me we have an opportunity to compare data if we're doing this research, what was or wasn't working prior to the change, the court decision, and then of course the statute we're operating under now, and what's happened since. And in particular, there's a lot of, I think, appropriate questions about inclusion on some of these. I'm really curious now. So we know our overdose numbers continue to go up, particularly in the last year. Now the number one cause of death by a large measure, if you're under 50. What's the racial background on that? Who are we hurting? And is it reflective of the policy we put in place in the last year? I think we need to understand that. I don't argue that the policies before the last year were the wrong track. I think that is absolutely true. I am just not yet convinced we have chosen a better track. And I don't want to replace one tragic situation with another tragic situation. So understanding the data over the last year, I think is particularly important to understand if we're actually moving in a better direction or if just doing something different and in fact maybe hurting people more.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And I think that we're talking about, yeah, whom are, who is it that, is as far as demographics go, we need to understand that as well. And I think that Malika was talking about that earlier, and the whom is important.
Yep.
And yep. All right. Thank you. Malika, you're up.
So just in some partial validation of what Chad, John, Senator Braun, and Caleb are speaking to, nothing is not the answer. I think that the last year and a half couldn't be a demonstration of what we can, is not a demonstration of what we can do, because we've been trying to stand up systems of response. But not having a response isn't good enough. Prohibition-based and a prohibition-based approach is what is creating our poisonous drug supply. Since the time of alcohol prohibition, people made bathtub gin and people were going blind. There was violence because it was unregulated, underground market that breeds violence. I mean, these are the consequences of our approaches. We haven't been able to stand up a comprehensive approach that is in response. We don't have enough investment. From my understanding, this policy change was a down payment on creating systems of care throughout all of our state and creating an alternative response. We can't undo 50 years of, at least 50 years of policy in a year and a half with just a down payment. We're not there yet, but I don't think that we can, in good faith, go say that we need to go back to our punishment-based system. I mean, and to answer the question about who is most impacted by, overdose, Indigenous people have been the population that is most impacted by overdose death in Washington state for years, 4 times more likely to die than a white person. And also, now, Black men and Black people are the growing group of people that are experiencing overdose death rates. So in our state and other groups of people of color. So, we need to do something. And we're the same groups of people that have disproportionately been experiencing the impacts of business as usual. So, I don't think that we're at a place where we can say that it's time to go backwards because what we're doing right now isn't working. Not having a response is not appropriate. We do have evidence-based models that we're in the process of trying to stand up as part of the Recovery Navigator program as a person who provides technical assistance for the LEAD model. For whatever your feelings may be about, Seattle and all the other stuff, having relationship-based harm reduction, not as a free-for-all lack of structure, but as a tool of engagement, to engage with people, to get them to engage in a self-determined manner in moving along the cycle of behavior change in order to change their lives. We do know that that works. Have we been able to scale it? No. We have an opportunity to create real change to create real access to services throughout our whole entire state that are based on community input. Communities get to decide how these things are implemented. We have an opportunity, and this particular group gets to help support that. The question becomes how. But going backwards doesn't seem like, a good option. I think we need to invest more in creating the change that we want to see. And I hope that we can at least make more investment on those down payments. We have successfully replicated LEAD programs throughout the whole entire state, but on a very small scale. But communities can tell you that they are seeing transformative change in their community. You're creating systems of response that are meaningful.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Malika. And that's, thank you. John Hayden.
Yes.
Your hand was up, sir?
No, it was before, not now.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Amber. Amber Davis.
I think that Vicky's hand was up way before mine.
Okay, I'm just going by what's popping
Okay.
up here on the top, so go ahead. All right, Vicky, go ahead.
Me?
Vicky, can you hear me? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I
Sorry.
felt like I'm jumping out of line. I just want to say that I hear stigma, and I feel like we need to address that whenever it's in the room. People don't use opioids, they don't, and other drugs because they didn't go to jail enough. They use because they have unresolved trauma. And so I'm just really think that should be our focus. And I thought it was to be our focus. So maybe I don't understand. I'm new, obviously. But, if somebody's diabetic and their blood sugars are out of control, we don't take away their medication for not behaving, And so the treatment for opioid use disorder isn't jail. It's not incarceration. We've made it that, and that's wrong. So to focus on that as a possible solution when we know it's wrong, we need to be moving forward, not looking backwards. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thanks, Vicky. So we're gonna go ahead and go to, looks like Amber, you're gonna be next. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. I just want to say that also the data from the last couple years is also kind of like swirling with COVID, and that makes it really difficult to know what that data would have been without it, and it should be taken into account. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. And so just a reminder for folks, again, and there's a lot of good conversation here. We appreciate it. Getting back to the question that is, that we were asking is there anything that you need, any other data? So just keep that in mind too as we progress here. So, Lauren Davis.
Thank you. Just want to make 3 quick comments. The first is to just thank Vicky for her comment, and just I think most of you are incredibly steeped in this work, but just to remind everybody, to Vicky's well taken point about trauma, that opioids in particular, the part of the brain that experiences physical pain that opioids impact is the same part of the brain that experiences emotional pain, and that's the piece. That's why opioids are used as sort of an analgesic for trauma. 2 other comments I wanted to make as we're thinking about what has happened since the Blake decision. So one comment is just to make sure that we don't confuse correlation with causation. So something else happened around the time of the Blake decision that had nothing to do with Washington state policy, which is that the People's Republic of China changed the scheduling of fentanyl. And instead of fentanyl coming from China, it's now coming from Mexico. And that is what has led to this huge proliferation of fentanyl in the market and massive overdoses. So it had nothing to do with little Washington state's policy. And the last comment I want to make is, so the flagship investment and intervention in response to the Blake decision was this Recovery Navigator program, which is literally just now getting stood up in every community around the state. And so we really need to look at, when we talk about data, that data needs to start at the point that this intervention became real in community, which in some communities was Q1 of this year, and in many communities is going to be Q2. And it would be unfair and unscientific to look at kind of the in-between data, because the proposal in 5476 was not do nothing. It was actually this incredibly robust, peer-driven, person-centered, comprehensive, long-term intensive case management model, aka LEAD, aka Recovery Navigator program, which is wildly successful. It's not here yet. And so we just need to make sure that we're looking at data post-implementation of Recovery Navigator in a given community, not comparing it to the vacuum that was created because the legislature was unprepared for the Supreme Court decision the morning of February 25th. We had no idea that that was happening. So thank you.
Thank you. Caleb, thanks for being patient.
Absolutely. Couple data things. I will send out to the group later the data around drug overdose trends, because fentanyl started increasing in 2016 in Washington state. And we're seeing the same increases in parallel across all Western United States, and we're 3 years behind the Eastern Seaboard. So those things are not associated, and I'm happy to share those data. And I think the challenge of this law, and Rep. Davis kindly participated in a webinar we did a while ago around Blake, and really articulated why the law seems to be the way it is, which I don't think anybody sees as ideal. And it's not sequenced correctly. You know, it took effect immediately. Diversions took effect immediately to nowhere, not being documented in a systematic way. Recovery Navigator programs have been funded and are launched. We have some broad guidelines that were written last June or whatever it was, but we don't have a plan put forward, and we don't have new, robust, low barrier services. We have care navigators to what? So it is correct. We cannot look over the last year, unfortunately, very unfortunately, to data to inform this statewide. I was hoping to present today, and I will send it out to the group as well, some preliminary data from, I think, an interesting project with 1,300 folks with 12,000 encounters with care navigators about their level of engagement with care and what they wanted to talk about. And we'll be working on that data over the summer, really complicated by COVID, really complicated by DOH not being able to put out hospitalization data and mortality data being greatly lagged. So the data will be challenging. But we do have some sort of promise and practice type things, which I think are appropriate given the brave new world we're in and sort of rapid sort of creativity and launching new programs. So we have some data to inform this process, and I hope to share some of it today as a model, but I'll have to forward that in an email to folks. But we do have some data to inform it. The modeling does not have to make up the algorithm component. That's something we can definitely base this on. So I'm excited to have that conversation.
All right, thank you, Caleb. Okay. So Michelle, Michael, we've extended, we've exhausted our hands rather. What else do we need to know today?
Blake, this is Michael. I think one of the comments that came through in the chat was around ITA. And because we do have time on the agenda today, it would be interesting to get a few more comments about ITA. We can look for the data. But the question often arises, no, we don't want jail. We don't want the legal system if we can avoid it. But when we have people who are at imminent danger of harm to themselves or others, there is the ITA system. Other than pulling data from that, since we have some time, it would be interesting to hear committee members' thoughts about the ITA system and whether that's something that would be part of the response or not. So I see Vicky's hand going up. Not advocating one way or the other, just would like a few more voices about ITA for a moment if we have time.
Yeah, this is Vicky. I'm just wondering about ITA versus LRA, least restrictive alternatives. Are there data, just showing the difference? And that, ITA is to stabilize people and get them back to their communities. So there still needs to be resources beyond that. It's just a short term, try and get people safe enough that they can get the treatment they need. So I'm really, we're really working on our behavioral health codes for tribes and really focused on the least restrictive alternatives where we can really do that. But it is unfortunately a necessary evil in my mind. I don't know if evil's a good word, but
Well, we can look for LRA data if we have it too. It's going to be probably pretty limited, but thank you, Vicky.
Okay, so Michael, can you reference the chat that you were talking about there? Some people can't see the chat.
Oh,
on
I
the
think
ITA discussion.
Yeah, I think it was put on here. I think we got that on. One moment. It says we should also get data on how ITA, crisis stabilization centers, and inpatient treatment programs are working outside of the criminal justice system. So that was the reference there. And there may have been others. That's the one that was pulled and put on there that I saw. So.
Okay. So we have more hands up. Thank you, Vicky. And so Lauren Davis.
Thank you. It will surprise none of you who know my personal history with Ricky's Law to raise my hand to talk about substance use disorder, ITA. I, not surprisingly, am a believer that civil commitment has a role for a small subpopulation of the folks that we're talking about. I believe that civil commitment is a last resort. I believe very strongly that we should always endeavor to, can you give me 1 second? Sorry. Sorry, I'm in a hotel in Arizona for a behavioral health and somebody was trying to enter my room. Anyway, so it's all good. So anyway, what I was saying is that, I think it's important that we right size in these conversations the population for whom civil commitment would be appropriate. I think the general public has a perception that the overwhelming majority of this population is not interested in services, and the inverse is actually correct. I mean, it's almost never that somebody has absolutely no interest in no services of any kind. But yes, there is a percentage, 10-ish% perhaps of folks for whom this would be appropriate. It's also important that 10-ish% is not stagnant. So that might be on a given day, people float in and out of willingness and in and out of crisis. The other thing I just want to note for the committee's edification and we won't have data for a while, but thanks to the good Representative Taylor and Senator Dingra, we made a mammoth piece of progress this year with House Bill 1773 related to assisted outpatient treatment, which is basically involuntary outpatient. It's been on the books in Washington for quite some time and has basically been non-functional for all intensive purposes. And that legislation really blew open the front door, in my opinion, in a really positive way on who can petition for civil commitment. So it's jail release planners, it's emergency department physicians, it's mental health and substance use disorder professionals. It's a much broader list than just the concentrated power in DCRs, which has been the inadequately staffed DCRs, mind you. So I just think that's a tool that we should think about in the context of these conversations. And I'll also just say, the data on Ricky's Law is phenomenal. People actually do, in fact, do very well and get better because, in fact, nobody enjoys the misery that is active addiction.
Okay, so I had an issue with the mute button there. Thank you. Amber, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that out here in the boonies, we don't really have anything except for voluntary crisis stabilization services, and they're not for people with a presenting problem of substance use. They're for the presenting problem of suicidal ideation, mental health. They will accept people with substance use, but not if they're in danger of any sort of detox or withdrawal management needs, like any DTs or seizures. We have one little tiny hospital. So crisis stabilization, I actually had a client that called me one time and was like, I've been drinking for a week. I haven't eaten in 5 days. Can you help me? And all I could do was call crisis stabilization. And when they got there, he was ambivalent and didn't want to talk to her. And so she was like, do you want to end the assessment, sir? And he was drinking for a week straight. So he's like, yeah. And nobody could do anything for him. Like the paramedics wouldn't come for him. So, I mean, in that situation, I mean, because when I called 911 as a mandated reporter, I asked for a paramedic, and they sent out a voluntary crisis person that was, you know, let him end an assessment. And so that obviously doesn't work. I would really like to talk about what we're going to do in areas where there is only one game in town, you know, and it's not a state organization. It's a, you know, a private corporation provider, you know, that they're making their rules based on, you know, liability reasons and what they can and can't afford or will and won't deal with, based on, like, you know, as opposed to what the need in the community is. Because it just really made me sad that, you know, here I am required by law to report this incident and nobody could do anything for this individual.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Senator Brown.
Yeah, I really appreciate Amber's comment there. I am really curious because I feel a little bit like the odd man out in this entire group. What changes if we have more services available? What changes that makes the individual Amber referred to have a different response to anybody that can't impel them to proceed with treatment? What makes it all of a sudden, if we have more services now, they'll say, now I care more. I've been drinking for a week, but I care more. I respond more to someone else. I really don't get that. And I don't want to be difficult here. I'm just really don't understand how, just because we have more available, individuals who are under the influence of various substances now all of a sudden decide, hey, I'm going to participate this time. That I don't get
Senator,
that. And I'd like to understand better.
can I? Okay, so this individual that called me, what I've been his peer support, his certified peer counselor for over a year, and he called me because he had a plan to kill himself, and he didn't want to do that, but he was also really inebriated and couldn't trust. He said he didn't trust himself not to do it, and medically speaking, he needed help. But because his presenting problem was alcohol use, and because he'd been doing it for so long that he couldn't go to the crisis place because his presenting problem wasn't mental health, it was now substance use. And because our little tiny hospital only has so many ER beds, nobody would or could do anything for him. I think that's very obvious that there's a lack of services.
I don't disagree with you, the assertion that we lack services. That's not the disagreement. I'm just not, and we don't need to solve this here. I just don't get how, my experience is the services weren't the problem. Access wasn't the problem. It was a willingness to accept those services or participate in those services. And I think feels like we're just gonna wish it's gonna be better in the future. We're gonna model a better future where they make better decisions, but that doesn't seem clear to me that that will happen on its own. So I don't mean to sound insensitive. I just don't get how we're going to wish this to happen just because we have more services available. I don't want to belabor this. I'm trying to understand the perspective of virtually everybody else on this call, and I'm not getting it yet. I'll keep trying.
I just want to make it clear this individual is asking for help, and crisis wouldn't take him.
Medical help. Medical help.
Yeah, my point was by the time any kind of help arrived, he'd become ambivalent or changed his mind. It's my experience is that happens more frequently than not. So maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. Let's Malika, you had your hand up. Let's go ahead and move on to Malika.
So, I mean, if we're saying that the only time that somebody, I'm not willing to let this go. Like a person shouldn't only have one shot to be able to get help. And it sounds like this person asked to get help and they had been asking to get help. And when the help did arrive, that person was so far down the path that it wasn't going to be meaningful for that individual anymore. The little bit of help that wasn't actually appropriate and wasn't actually the right thing that person needed. What we're talking about is creating systems of care that a person can access when they actually need it and when they are able to engage in it. I don't know if people are seeing what Brandy is saying in the chat, but that, when a person engages with somebody, if they change their mind, they can do that, but they shouldn't just be left to the wind, that they can't ever ask for help again, or because the poor system that was in place wasn't enough, that it's somehow their fault. I want to, and I'm not saying this in an attacking way, because I think I know your heart to a certain degree, Senator Braun. I've watched you in a lot of different circles, so I don't want what I'm about to say to come off that way. But like, do we say that it feels like there's some stigma that is shaping some of the thinking that, or the understanding, not the thinking, the understanding of what is being described. The person was not able to get what they needed. It wasn't that they didn't want help. They couldn't get what they needed. And that's, I think, something that happens in many of our communities. And I say that as a person who does not live in Seattle. I don't live in a place where there's a lot of resources. But even there's not enough. People don't have what they need when they need it. And if we have more options for people, we can catch them before they fall so far that it's almost impossible to, or it feels like it's impossible to get them back. I don't think that it's ever impossible, except for when a person's dead.
All right. Thank you, Malika. Appreciate that. Kendall, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I would just like to add, as someone who's known and loved many persons with substance use disorders, they do change their mind all the time. In fact, I hear a lot of people tell me, this event happened and I realized I wanted to get help. And just, it might not be on our timeline or what we wish for them. Like Malika was saying, it might not be the first time that we offer help, but regardless, I do think the options should be available. And I do see people all the time trying to access services and getting turned away for one reason or another. So I do think that we need to focus on services and pivot from the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. So anything else on that? Good conversation. Okay, Michael, we have roughly 5 minutes until public comments. Is there anything that you wanted to know, Michelle? Anything else you want to talk about?
Blake, I don't know if it's today, but first of all, so much appreciation, folks, for you guys weighing in here. This is an important topic, and we got a lot of different perspectives here today. We certainly know folks present with all range of needs, and we're able to talk about several of those today, so thank you. There was a comment made earlier, I think it was, I don't know if it was Malika or Kayla brought up about the voting. And while we have 5 minutes here, I think that before we get in a situation where we're going to have something come forward and we need to vote, we should decide about this majority piece here, whether or not we want that to be a 50% plus one, or if we want to do a supermajority at 60 or 75 or something. Again, my desire would be to have consensus on recommendations, but we may not get there. So would this be a point where we could take a little bit of feedback on that and see if people would be interested in a majority or a supermajority, or is this something we might use a Mente for maybe at the next meeting, Blake, and take a poll in real time and kind of get a sense of that? Just
yeah, that would
since we have
probably,
a couple minutes.
Yeah, that might be a good approach, is to look at the Menti and have that, you know, as something we can use somewhat. You know, it is anonymous, unless you're the you're actually running it. So we could do it that way. That would make sense.
Okay, and maybe put out 2 or 3 options and let folks vote on it that way. It looks like a couple of people putting their hand up, so I'll let you go back on that. And we just have a couple minutes before public comment too. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Kendall, did you have your hand up again?
No, sorry.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. So we have a couple minutes here. Michael, do you want to go ahead and get into the public comment then?
Sure. I think that would be good. And I think you're facilitating, Blake, if I'm looking at it there. But for those of you that have been on with us before, there's a bit of a time limit here. I think Michelle is at 3 minutes. Is that what we have for public comment? Yeah. So go for it, Blake. I think we can get in now. Maybe we get a few more voices in.
Okay. So we will, at this point, open up for public comments. So again, with that, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And so if you would like to comment, please raise your hand now if you can. All right. Mark Cook, please. Mark, are you there?
Good morning. Sorry, I was just getting off mute. Mark
no worries.
Of Washington. Just a very quick point that others have made about one, data point that's getting talked a lot about is overdose. And I was just looking at the CDC map for 2020 to 2021. 47 states have seen increases. The biggest ones have been in South Dakota, Kansas, and Alaska. So it really is a national problem. So just really encourage everybody to kind of understand that as we're looking at what's happening in Washington State. It's certainly a huge problem here. There's been a big increase, but it really is a national level issue, and just wanted to reiterate that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I think we have Lisa D on the phone. Lisa, you want to make a comment?
Thanks for whoever flagged that. So this is Lisa Dugard with the Public Defender Association. I have spent a lot of my professional career in the criminal legal system, so I wanted to comment on the really important question of, what should be the role of that system. We, my colleagues and I who work with the LEAD model, teach a rule of decision, which is that there's no always true answer. Rather, we should, as far as possible, create a system in which the best response is the one that is given. And that is frustrating to people because it's not black and white and it isn't automatic. So I say this to say that it is, the appeal of a criminal legal system response is that system exists. action is taken, it is obvious by the fact that we've taken the action that we don't think the situation is okay and we think that a response is necessary. The problem is that the action that is taken is well known to almost all the time make it harder for people to recover and stabilize. The fact that there are a couple of instances, you know, anecdotally where that is not, but where someone has made it despite those obstacles doesn't mean that we don't know, as a matter of data and research, that most of the time it makes things worse. It's also very expensive because you end up paying a lot of lawyers to oversee people's attempted recovery. There has been national debate about whether it is, you know, whether you can coerce treatment. And I'm just going to say that let's concede for the sake of argument that it were true that you can, that some people will engage in treatment and care through the criminal legal system. The same data show that people will engage in treatment and care outside of the criminal legal system if it is made available. So I hope that this committee recommends that we do that we engage everybody who can be engaged outside of the criminal legal system, because it's more effective, it's less harmful, and we can provide more care for more people with the same funds. That I would also say, like, there will be people who have substance use issues who continue to commit non-divertible crimes. They will be in the criminal legal system, so we need to have trauma-informed practices within that system that are much more effective than the ones we currently find there. Thank you so much for giving us this time.
Thank you. Emily.
Hi, this is Emily Hurio from the Washington State Department of Health. I work in the Office of Infectious Disease. And I just, you know, I haven't been to the meetings before. This was my first one. So I just had some questions to pose to the group for you all to consider. I know you're not going to respond to them right now, but I'm just curious if there's been any discussion about the connection between physical and mental health and behavioral health, because the example provided by someone about the client she had really spoke to that. And from our work with syringe service programs, you know, the findings that the survey ADAI does with the SSPs have shown people really need one-stop shops where their physical and mental health and substance use services can be provided in one place. I'm curious if that's come up in any of these conversations, how to maybe leverage the Medicaid system along with the reforms you're talking about to create these kinds of one-stop shops where, you know, people could have multiple needs attended to. You know, even things like hepatitis C, we know having hep C can cause depression. Depression can cause people to do things they might not normally be interested in doing. These are all connected issues, and we know this is a population disproportionately impacted by things like hepatitis. I also thinking about comprehensive drug checking services. We have a crisis of overdose. We need to be doing different things and looking at different things. So I'm curious if that's come up about how to create sort of these systems of care where people can get all their needs met in one place in a low barrier, harm reduction oriented way, where they aren't stigmatized, where they trust the staff. And we know syringe service programs are, you know, inadequately resourced, but have the trust of the community members and could be really important partners in work like this. The other question I had for the group was if there's been any discussion about job training. There was a comment in the chat about social determinants of health. And we know when people have meaningful work and are earning money and feel that they have a purpose, they do better in lots of domains. And I think syringe service programs could be a really important place to foster, you know, some job training, have community cleanup crews where people are building goodwill with the community, helping to destigmatize low barrier harm reduction programs by being a face in the community, showing that they're cleaning it up. And those folks at the same time are getting job training, feeling empowered, having some self-direction, and maybe being prepared for the next step in their life. They now have something on their resume and a reference. So I just wanted to kind of pose those ideas and questions because I hadn't heard them come up exactly in that way today. And I know I've missed a lot of previous conversations, but these are things that swirl around in my head a lot. So thanks for the time.
Thank you so much. Okay, we still have time for public comment. Okay, Michael's the chair. Okay, we got, oh, excellent. Thank you. Barb Putnam?
Putnam, yeah, hello, everyone. I've been quietly a guest at your meetings. I'm from DCYF, and I just wanted to thank the person who, when we were talking about data earlier in the meeting, about including in the DCYF child welfare touched population. As you think about the impacts and the need for services across the board, we do have a significant increase in out-of-home placements because of or as a part of parents' SUD involvement and not being able to keep their children safe and not being able to get into treatment services. So that is a part of the kind of broader story that I'm tracking and that I'm hopeful that we can address along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, still time for public comment? Sharisa, Dr. Patinos.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Just wanted to comment on a couple of the things that I heard. I think one of the things contributing to the increase in overdose death, like anything, it's multifactorial. I think one thing to appreciate is fentanyl is so much more potent than heroin or morphine. It only takes one dose of fentanyl if you're not used to opioids to kill you. So this is a different game. It's a different landscape than we've had to deal with before. So I think in part the overdose deaths are from people who may not even know they're taking fentanyl and their oxycodone or whatever it is they bought. So I think that's one thing that we have to keep in mind as sort of a moving variable in all of this. And I think in terms of, Senator Braun's comments, I think, I'm an addiction medicine and family medicine doc, and I've been doing this for about 30 years. And most of my career has been taking care of folks who struggle with substance use disorders. Caleb made the point, not everybody who uses a substance has a substance use disorder. So we have to keep that in mind. Rep. Davis made the point that really the folks who struggle the most are that 10% who may not be able to muster whatever they need individually to take that step, and they may also have mental health problems. But if you think about folks that you've interacted with or know who struggle with substance use disorders, they do not feel very good about themselves. And why should they? Because none of us treat them very well. They're stigmatized. They are turned away by providers like myself who don't understand addiction. They are shunned. We don't lock people up in jail when they don't take their insulin. We don't. So people who are struggling with substance use disorders have often lost most everything that's dear to them, and their self-esteem is zero. So it's not a matter of just saying you have a service or you don't have a service. It's a matter of saying, what do you need today? I care about you. I want to help you. And maybe that day it's food, and maybe the next day it's a warm place to sleep. But I think that we also have to keep in mind, in addition to the trauma that often leads folks down this road, that they don't have any ability to feel good about themselves. And until we can help people do that, they're not going to be interested in treatment. Why? So I think it's a really complex subject. I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness on the committee. This is an amazing discussion that I've been really appreciative of listening to, and the committee's in good hands. But I just wanted to share some of my observations, having done this for a very long time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, still more time, about 5 minutes left. Okay, again, 5 minutes for public comment. All right, and you see we have some links in the chat here from Caleb. A link, thank you. All right. So Michelle doesn't look, or Michael doesn't look like we have anybody else with a hand raised. So shall we move on?
Sure. And Blake, and committee, I'm with you all. My computer chose to restart itself, and so you may not see me, but I've been listening. Yes, and Blake, thank you. Thank you for bringing yourself to the table and the online documenting. I think that helped the conversation. And committee members, thank you all, like I said before, for weighing in today. I'll turn it to Michelle to close out, but really appreciate all of your contributions. And it was mentioned earlier, I know a lot of you are putting time in between meetings, so thank you. As we do typically also, as we close these out, Senator Dinger, if you're still on, if you wanted to say a word in closing, you're welcome to do so as well.
Thank you. I have just been really enjoying the conversation, and I do want to thank everyone for sharing. These are very tough issues, and I think it is important that regardless of how we're coming to this work, to recognize that everyone is coming to this work because they deeply care. And I also want to make sure that we are always making room for everyone's opinions, regardless of whether or not or how we feel about them, because I think it is very important to get to a result or a solution that has wide buy-in. So I do truly want to thank everyone for their honesty and coming to this work with such dedication.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, would you like to take us through next steps and wrap up, please?
Yeah. Sorry, Ember, I saw your hand up a minute ago.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a final comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say I have to leave because I have a doctor's appointment.
Oh, okay.
I can't put it in the chat because I don't have it. And thank you,
All
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, for next steps, HCA will begin gathering the data that we can from what we were told is needed, so you can formulate your recommendations around this topic, and get back to you with that as soon as possible. Michael, did we want to talk about a potential meeting between now and the June meeting?
Well, the thought was if we needed to have more time on this important topic around the possession charges, that we may need to do it outside of our regular scheduled meetings, just because they all have to be paced and get our recommendations from the subcommittees in. So I think we heard a lot today, and maybe we could take that back and look it over and see what the appropriate amount of time is to bring forward some of the data that was asked for. So I guess the bottom line is I'm not sure if between now and June, or maybe between June and July, but there may be a time, folks, when we have to make our recommendations on that particular item that we call a special meeting. I think that was the point on that one. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then the only thing left in terms of wrap up was there had been mention of having an in-person meeting at some point. And sorry, Michael, again, do you want to provide some comment and update on that?
Sure. So we're at a place for our building that the conference rooms are still closed, and we have not gotten to a point where we're inviting guests into the building as of yet. Matter of fact, we still have some staff that aren't coming into the building. So when that opens up, we'd be happy to host that. We'll also look, maybe if it's not at our building, we could look at other venues, but we still have to kind of monitor our own staff support for that in terms of all things COVID. So when it looks like we have a green light to be able to host an in-person meeting for those who would want to do that, we will do that. It just won't be in the month of May and maybe a couple months out yet. So we'll keep you posted when it looks like things open up.
All right, thank you, Michael. And that's all I have for the wrap up and next steps. So I think that concludes the meeting for today. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle.